The red light on the camera flickers. A dozen crew members shout over each other as costumed kids scramble across a neon set. Someone's yelling for wardrobe, someone else for slime refills. It's chaos, but the kind Nickelodeon built an empire on. Back then, every soundstage in Orlando felt like lightning in a bottle. Kids weren't just watching TV, they were making it. But behind that creativity, one producer was quietly rising. The same freedom that made Nickelodeon unstoppable would soon unravel it. To understand how, we need to rewind to where the magic began. Section 1. The Golden Age of Nickelodeon. Before screen time was measured in hours, Nickelodeon was a feeling. The orange splat, the messy sets, the sense that grown-ups were only barely in control. The early 90s were different. Before endless reboots, before algorithms decided what kids loved. Here, you had shows that didn't talk down to their audience, they laughed with them. It started with originals like Clarissa Explains It All, Are You Afraid of the Dark, and all that. Each one had its own universe. Clarissa was the smart, sarcastic teen who treated you like a friend. The storytellers of Are You Afraid of the Dark turned ghost stories into campfire folklore. All that took sketch comedy, a playground ruled by grown-ups like Saturday Night Live, and gave it to kids. It was chaos, but in the best possible way. Nickelodeon's office culture back then was unlike anything else on television. Executives encouraged risk. They didn't chase trends, they created them. The slogan, "By Kids for Kids," wasn't just marketing. It was a mission statement. Writers experimented. Directors let actors improvise. It felt rough, homemade, alive. The shows looked like their audience's world, messy, colorful, and filled with energy. And it all centered around Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida. For anyone who visited, it felt like walking into Willy Wonka's factory, if slime replaced chocolate. The complex at Universal Studios wasn't just a filming location. It was a dream, built for kids to see television being made. Fans could peer through glass walls and watch their favorite actors perform live, while tour guides ushered them past sound stages. That transparency, literally seeing behind the curtain, felt revolutionary. It said, "This belongs to you." At its peak, the Orlando studio employed hundreds of crew members and a rotating cast of bright-eyed child actors. Many of them were local hires, giving the network an authentic, grounded energy. They weren't perfect. They were real. They stumbled, laughed mid-line, and the shows left it in. That imperfection became a kind of honesty on screen, and audiences ate it up. The ecosystem thrived on collaboration. Writers, producers, and actors often crossed between shows. A kid who started as an extra on Clarissa might show up a year later doing sketches on All That. That sense of community helped the network feel like summer camp, a group project that never really ended. Nickelodeon built trust with its viewers by celebrating the weird and wonderful. When most networks played it safe, Nick reveled in absurdity. Sliming your favorite celebrity was a reward, not punishment. The network's promos felt like inside jokes, shared with millions of kids who finally had a space made for them. That's why so many stars from that era still feel like friends. We grew up with them, on their terms. But here's the thing about creative freedom. It can't exist without someone managing the chaos. And as Nickelodeon's hit list grew, so did the pressure to keep topping itself. Executives wanted more shows, faster turnarounds, and bigger ratings. The quirky experimentation that built the brand started to formalize. Auditions became pipelines. Writers' rooms ran like factories. And somewhere along the line, one producer began standing out. A creative mind who seemed to have a direct line to what kids wanted. His fingerprints were everywhere. The sketches, the tone, The jokes that grown-ups found slightly too edgy, but kids adored. His shows became the gold standard, the blueprint for Nickelodeon's success. And when his name popped up in the credits, you knew it was going to be must-watch TV. In an industry built on constant reinvention, he seemed unstoppable. Still, that centralization came with a quiet shift. The collaborative messiness that once defined Nick's magic was starting to narrow into a singular voice. What began as shared chaos turned into one man's creative empire, carefully managed, ruthlessly efficient, undeniably effective. While Orlando's stages kept buzzing with laughter and slime, somewhere beneath that orange glow, the balance between freedom and control began to tip. Behind the laughs, Nickelodeon was building not just shows, but a power structure that would change everything. Section 2, The Rise of the Power Producer. To understand how Nickelodeon's creative spark narrowed into one man's vision, we need to talk about Dan Schneider. He didn't start as a mogul. In the late 80s, he was a character actor, appearing on sitcoms, soaking in timing, rhythm, and what made young audiences laugh. When he transitioned to writing, it was almost accidental. But the match between his comedy instincts and Nickelodeon's appetite for youth-centric, unpredictable humor was instant. At first, he was just another contributor in a larger creative ecosystem. Within years, he would become its gravitational center. Schneider got his first major break writing for All That, Nickelodeon's sketch comedy laboratory. It was kids doing sketch comedy for kids, improvised, loud, and deeply weird in all the ways adults wouldn't think of. Schneider had a knack for spotting what would make a young audience feel mischievous rather than patronized. His dialogue felt spontaneous. His characters exaggerated the everyday. Teachers who lost control of their classrooms, clueless parents, absurd authority figures. It was the exact opposite of the squeaky clean sitcoms dominating network television. Nickelodeon realized he was tapping into something authentic, the chaos and rebellion of being a kid. Soon, Schneider's world expanded. He was given Kenan Kel, a spin-off built around two breakout stars from All That. His writing highlighted friendship, loyalty, and slapstick humor, all wrapped in catchphrases and physical gags that felt tailor-made for playground repetition. Each week, Nickelodeon drew millions of viewers who knew the rhythms by heart. It was repetition with just enough risk. Always another way to crash, spill, explode, or shout across a stage. His sets were loud, over the top, and seemingly spontaneous. But every moment was engineered to feel that way. By the late 90s, network executives had started to see a pattern. Shows with Schneider's name on them didn't just perform, they defined the network's identity. So they gave him more space to work, more control over the creative process. Writers who once pitched ideas through committees began presenting directly to him. Eventually, many ideas didn't even start outside his circle. If Schneider thought something would work, it was greenlit. That speed made Nickelodeon agile compared to larger, slower networks like Disney Channel. But it also meant the system began to orbit around a single voice. Inside Nickelodeon, he was known for creative intensity. Colleagues have described him as a man who lived inside the world of his shows, obsessive about detail, constantly rewriting, casting, and adjusting. On one hand, it produced legendary moments of children's television. On the other, it blurred boundaries. The writers' rooms that were once collaborative grew quieter as notes increasingly came from one direction. The signature absurdist tone became a house style, and soon other producers were encouraged to copy it. The Nickelodeon sound had been born. Fast-cut jokes, bombastic reactions, and kids who talked like they were in on every adult joke. That sense of kids acting like adults became both the network's hook and its cultural fault line. The humor danced on the edge, clever, edgy, sometimes towing into discomfort. For executives, it was the perfect blend of controversy and appeal. Kids felt subversive watching, while parents saw safe silliness. Schneider's shows found that razor edge and stayed on it for years. The Amanda Show, built around Amanda Bynes, was perhaps his purest expression of that formula. A whirlwind of sketches, caricatures, and parody. Its energy was relentless. Amanda was magnetic, a natural comedian with perfect timing. Under Schneider's guidance, she became Nickelodeon's new star, the face of its next generation. But power has gravity. As the show succeeded, Schneider's influence grew beyond the screen. He wasn't just producing content, he was shaping the entire creative language of a network aimed at millions of children. Nickelodeon's top brass, thrilled with ratings and merchandising, gave him more shows, more budgets, more creative freedom. Success insulated him from critique. If a writer disagreed, Schneider's track record silenced the argument. It became an open secret around the lot. His stamp was the fastest route to approval. And slowly, other creative voices receded. Behind that curtain, cracks began to form. Reports from crew members over the years have painted work environments marked by exhaustion and micromanagement. Writers described endless revisions. Young actors spoke later of pressure to maintain intensity across grueling shooting schedules. There's no single villain in this story, just a structure that rewarded relentless productivity and blurred the line between mentorship and total authority. The very traits that made Nickelodeon successful, speed, freedom, one consistent tone, were now creating imbalance. Employees often said nobody wanted to question him. His hits protected him from oversight. For the network, the calculation made sense, until it didn't. By the early 2000s, Schneider's creative pipeline expanded again, birthing Drake and Josh and Zoey, 101. Each new production outperformed the last, embedding catchphrases and icons into pop culture. The shows made instant stars of their young leads, launching multi-year contracts and global tours. But the repetition came at a cost. The spontaneity that once defined Nickelodeon now felt engineered. The tone was consistent but predictable. Each new series mimicked the one before, down to set design and pacing. Creativity had found its formula, and now that formula ruled. Meanwhile, the larger industry had shifted. Kids' television was becoming big business. Sponsorships, cross-promotions, soundtracks, and merchandise deals meant every character and storyline carried commercial potential. The more Schneider delivered, the more Nickelodeon relied on him to maintain that income stream. It was a cycle that rewarded efficiency over experimentation, a far cry from the messy, collaborative playground of Orlando in the early 90s. Many of those original creative teams were gone, and the Florida studio itself would soon close. Nickelodeon was a corporate machine now, powered by one man's instincts. Still, even in that corporate context, Schneider's work was undeniably effective. Kids loved it. Ratings remained high. The sitcom formula, built on exaggerated youth rebellion and emotional sincerity, made the characters feel aspirational. But as power centralized, so did the pressure. His shows required constant reinvention to stay funny and fresh, even as production deadlines tightened. When stories from behind the scenes later surfaced, accounts of tense sets or uncomfortable creative calls, they reflected an environment where art and authority were indistinguishable. It's tempting to paint this moment as the beginning of decline, but for Nickelodeon at the time, it was the exact opposite. The network was making more money than ever. To viewers, everything looked fine. The laughs were loud, the stars magnetic, the green slime still flying. Yet, the creative ecosystem had transformed. What once ran on communal chaos now relied on a single, adaptable vision. Schneider was its architect, taskmaster, and brand ambassador, rolled into one. Every network dreams of finding a creator who understands its audience instinctively. Nickelodeon found that, then built its entire identity around him. For nearly a decade, his shows would define childhood for millions. The kids who watched grew up quoting lines, buying soundtracks, following their favorite stars across spin-offs. But power is a currency that rarely stays invisible. As Nickelodeon's landscape narrowed, so did its tolerance for dissenting voices. The freewheeling culture that had once allowed anyone to pitch an idea was fading. And behind the laughter, something unspoken lingered. A sense that the house he built might not last. The irony is that no one intended harm. The network wanted hits. Schneider wanted to entertain. But when one person becomes the creative conscience of a generation, the system forgets the checks that kept it healthy. Nickelodeon's brightest era was now deeply tied to a single name, a single tone, and a single vision. What was once chaos shared by hundreds had become order, enforced by one. And while kids kept laughing at jokes on screen, a quieter story began unfolding behind it. The story of how creative control, unchecked for too long, can start to erode the very spirit it built. Section 3. A culture shifts behind the scenes. By the mid-2000s, Nickelodeon looked unstoppable from the outside, but behind the neon sets and laugh tracks, the culture had changed dramatically. The collaborative chaos of the Orlando studio was gone, replaced by a sleek, efficient Los Angeles machine, dictated by one creative vision. The shift in power was palpable. Ideas, jokes, and even costume choices now passed through a singular filter. The free-flowing collaboration that built Nickelodeon's identity gave way to a strict hierarchy. While the formula still generated hits, the tone on set became more calculated. Writers began tailoring scripts to a predictable house style, and the spontaneity that defined the early years became a rarity. Set life also changed. Young actors, some barely in high school, were anchoring entire franchises with unforgiving clockwork production schedules. The pressure was immense. Young stars were not just performers. They were products, managed closely by the network. The line between character and person blurred, and the stress manifested as exhaustion and, for some, a sudden retreat from the industry. While Nickelodeon's HR systems were built for a smaller, earlier era, they were not prepared for the realities of child stardom at this industrial scale. Parents grew protective, and whispers of creative burnout, micromanagement, and uncomfortable set dynamics circulated internally. The network, obsessed with maintaining its winning formula and commercial potential, often prioritized efficiency over the well-being and creative autonomy of its young stars. The storytelling itself reflected this shift. The artistic range of early Nickelodeon, from surreal sketches to quiet coming-of-age stories, narrowed drastically. The network's identity converged around bright, fast-paced teen sitcoms. This made business sense, creating dependable crowd pleasers, but it drained the strange, rebellious tone that once set Nickelodeon apart. The core problem was the erosion of safety nets. When one person became the source of both creative direction and ultimate approval, accountability became diffuse. The system rewarded control over curiosity, and those who questioned the process often found themselves replaced. The laughter that rang out in the studios masked a creative burnout that was quietly spreading. The network's brightest era was now deeply tied to a single, adaptable vision, and that concentration of power would eventually lead to a synchronized collapse of its star system. Section 4. The Vanishing Stars. By the time the 2000s were in full swing, Nickelodeon had a hall of fame of young stars: Kenan, Kel, Amanda, Drake, Josh, Jamie Lynn. They were the faces of an empire, but one after another, they began to fade with a synchronized absence that viewers felt but couldn't explain. The first major crack was the quiet contract endings and abrupt departures. Amanda Bynes, the network's crown jewel, stepped away suddenly. Insiders pointed to burnout and creative disputes, noting how the relentless production cycle had exhausted her. Her exit was symbolic. The last major act of the Orlando-era spirit was gone. Leaving a hole the network rushed to fill. Kel Mitchell's story echoed this pattern. After Kenan and Kel ended, his momentum vanished. The network was reinventing itself, steering programming toward polished teen sitcoms that mirrored the Disney Channel's formula. The goofy, messy unpredictability of the earlier sketch era was deemed outdated. The older stars, who thrived on that chaos, no longer fit the new corporate machine that prioritized sleek production and cross-platform tie-ins. The network's belief was that its brand was stronger than any single actor. This led to a cycle of replacement rather than nurturing. When a star wanted more creative agency or simply aged out of their role, replacement was easier than resolution. New casting cycles sought younger, unblemished talent who could be molded within the system for years. For fans, the silence was brutal. There were no farewell specials, just sudden absences. Characters would vanish between seasons, leaving viewers to piece together rumors. The truth was simple: systemic fatigue and a network too reliant on continuous success to admit vulnerability. Nickelodeon struggled to evolve alongside its child stars as they entered adolescence and began asking tougher questions about their roles. As soon as innocence gave way to maturity, the brand recoiled. By the time Zoey 101 wrapped, the machinery had shifted entirely toward image management. Stars were brands, and the new order demanded polish and compliance, not the messy authenticity of the 90s. The heavy control over behavior and public perception became the new normal. The vanishing of these stars was not a coincidence. It was a symptom of a system that valued control over curiosity. Each lost star marked a turning point in the network's DNA, revealing how the producer system, once a driver of success, had outgrown its own stability and was now consuming its own talent. The empire was looking familiar, but hollow. A living museum of its golden age without the souls who gave it heart. Section 5. The Producer's Downfall and Network Reckoning. From the outside, Nickelodeon still sparkled, but behind the scenes, the equilibrium was gone. The producer who once embodied the network's creative energy now stood at the center of mounting scrutiny. Internally, executives began noticing patterns they couldn't ignore: production chaos, high staff turnover, and growing unease among crew and parents. The network felt trapped. The man driving the company's biggest hits was also the source of its growing dysfunction. Reports of micromanagement, erratic temper, and a disregard for established boundaries circulated quietly. The breaking point was not a single event, but the accumulated fatigue combined with a shifting industry landscape. Social media was amplifying scrutiny on young stars, and advocacy groups demanded better protections for minors. Under this spotlight, Nickelodeon's former tolerance for unchecked creative authority became a massive corporate risk. In early 2018, the network announced its decision to part ways with Dan Schneider after decades of dominance. The diplomatic wording, "Both sides agreed to part ways," could not hide the significance. The creative engine of a generation was gone. The departure forced a network reckoning. Executives moved quickly to redistribute power and increase oversight. New committees formed around youth safety, implementing mandatory welfare coordinators and stricter communication rules between adults and minors on set. The goal was to dismantle the single authority structure that had allowed the problems to flourish. Former actors and crew began emerging cautiously into public conversation, painting a picture of complicated gratitude, thankful for the opportunities, but aware of the dysfunction. The cultural memory caught up. Documentaries and exposés revisited the network's heyday with a maturity that acknowledged how systemic structures allowed individuals to gain unchecked influence in youth media. Publicly, Nickelodeon began owning its legacy of both innovation and oversight failure. The network rebranded its creative process as Kid First, emphasizing that entertainment should never compromise dignity. The network's identity was no longer allowed to rest on one creative engine. The end of that producer's rule was not merely administrative. It marked the end of an era where creative excess was excused. The network's collapse of balance became Hollywood's wake-up call, forcing competitors to adopt similar practices. While fans still wrestle with reconciling the joy of the shows with the difficult truths behind their creation, the network proved that even an empire of laughter can evolve. Section 6, What We Lost and What Remains. When the dust settled, Nickelodeon was left with a strange legacy. It wasn't just a network, it was a generation's mirror. Those sound stages had produced memories stitched into every joke, every theme song, every splash of green slime. What we lost wasn't only the laughter or the performers, it was a kind of trust. In its golden age, Nickelodeon felt run by kids, for kids. It gave us flawed heroes and oddball friendship stories. Once that creative chaos hardened into structure, the fun felt rehearsed, and the spontaneity that made it special flickered out. At its height, Nickelodeon celebrated weirdness and invited kids to see themselves as creators. But when the corporate machinery took over, that message changed. Kids became viewers again, not co-conspirators. The see-through walls that once let visitors watch filming gave way to Hollywood soundstages, hidden behind security gates. Transparency, both literal and emotional, faded. Still, the influence of those early years endures. The alumni of that era carried its DNA into new corners of entertainment. Sketch humor on digital platforms, absurd teen comedies on streaming services, all trace back to Nickelodeon's mad laboratory. For us, the viewers, the shows became memory anchors. It's not just nostalgia, it's recognition. That era taught us that creative play could belong on mainstream TV. The tragedy lies in how fragile that environment was. The very qualities that fueled Nickelodeon's success, trust in youth, tolerance for risk, blurred boundaries, required constant care. Without balance, they tilted into exploitation or burnout. Yet what remains is just as important as what fell apart. Each performer who survived that pressure, each story that still brings joy, testifies to the resilience behind the curtain. The laughter those shows created was real. Nickelodeon's downfall revealed a broader truth about creativity under capitalism. Freedom thrives only when power is shared. The Orlando experiment worked because it trusted collaboration. Once that balance tipped into hierarchy, the innovation stopped. What remains, in the end, is legacy, not of perfection, but of potential. Nickelodeon's best years proved what happens when a network respects its audience's intelligence. Its worst years showed how quickly that respect can erode under pressure. Both halves coexist in our memories. The spirit of that messiness, the one that told kids they didn't have to fit in, outlasted the brand itself. That's what remains. Not the empire or the merchandise, but the shared language of jokes, catchphrases, and characters that taught a generation to create for the sheer joy of it. Conclusion: Nickelodeon's golden age ended not just because of scandal, but because the spirit that powered it collapsed under control. The network that once championed creativity forgot that chaos was its engine. When power pooled in one voice, collaboration faded, and with it, the sense of discovery that made childhood television electric. The lesson lingers far beyond television. Creativity flourishes when power is shared, when weird ideas are allowed to breathe. Nickelodeon's story reminds us that laughter needs freedom as much as structure, that safety and invention don't have to compete. So what memory from that era still lives with you? The sketch, the show, the line that defined your Saturdays? Tell us below, and don't forget to subscribe before you go, because every week here at The Throwback, we rewind the stories that shaped who we became.